Alrighty. Hello, boys and girls. This is Danny Marbin from Marbin. Welcome to episode 6 of Marbin Daily Tips, Noodles and Shredding. This is going to be the last episode for a while because tonight, me and Danny are going to go see Bill Burr in Madison, which is not a part of our tour, but tomorrow we're driving straight to Pennsylvania and then starting our East Coast tour. So we're going to be doing that, and then they're flying us to Columbia. Woo, not Columbia, Missouri, even though there's nothing wrong with Columbia, Missouri. It's cool. Columbia, the country. So, yeah, we're going to do that for a little bit. So I'll be back here probably October 24th, and we'll get back into doing this stuff then. So in the meantime, I leave you with 6 lessons, and hopefully you're getting stuff out of it. All right, so last time we talked about functional harmony. So, again, from questions, I could see one thing I didn't explain clearly. Sorry, my bad. Diminished passing chords. When we talked about those, diminished passing chords are the ones that you play, like if you have C, C sharp diminished, and D minor. Now, C sharp diminished isn't necessarily a diminished passing chord. It is if it goes to the chord that's a half step above it, with a root half step above it, that's built from the scale. So, like, in C major, the 2 chord is D minor. So the chord leading to it, if it's C sharp diminished, then it's a diminished passing chord. If you have like the 3 minor chord, E minor, the chord a half step below it, if you have E flat diminished, then it's the diminished passing chord leading to that. Why is that useful? Because if it's leading to one of those major scale constructed chords, then on the diminished chord you treat it as if it was the secondary dominant. Okay? Again, secondary dominance, the secondary dominant of D is A minor, of D minor in the key of C is A minor, of E minor is B. So here's A minor, here's C sharp diminished, almost the same chord. It's basically the same chord with a flat 9 instead of a root. Like here is A7 first inversion. Here's A diminished, or here's C sharp diminished, I mean. See, it's one note difference. It's putting the flat 9 instead of the root. So A7, C sharp diminished. So again, if that's leading to a D minor, then I play D harmonic minor on the C sharp diminished. Let me get a pick. All right. So C sharp, A7, C sharp diminished. So D harmonic minor on the C sharp diminished sounds like this. It's the 7th mode of harmonic minor, and then on the D minor, Dorian. So again. All right. So I hope that answers it. Oh, if basically the situation where you don't play the harmonic minor on the diminished chords is if, let's say, you have that diminished chord and it goes down back to a different chord. So like if you have E flat diminished going to E minor is a leading or a passing diminished chord. But E flat diminished going to D minor is a different story. You see that a lot, like if you have turnarounds in gypsy jazz or in old jazz, when you have like C over E, E flat diminished, D minor 7, G7, like 1, flat 3 diminished, 2, 5. All right. And in terms of the sound you play, then you play symmetric diminished. Okay, so those jangoy kind of turnarounds. So that second chord, that's a symmetric diminished sound. Okay, enough about that. Answering another question, and this one, I don't know why I freaked you out when I talked shit about playing out. But I get it. A lot of people. Now, I'm not sure if we all mean the same thing when we say playing out. I don't mean playing chromatically around the mode, which is something that, like, I do all the time. It creates kind of a flow inside there. They do it in Bigo, they do it in every style. You have 7 notes. The idea of this whole thing is this. It's simple. You have 7 notes, usually, that sound good on a chord, right? Why? You have 4 chord tones that are in the chord, and then kind of 3 tensions spaced like this. So root, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7. Okay? So those are obviously the notes that sound good. Playing out to me is when you're like, oh, wait a second, no, I'm going to do this, or that. Just cram 2 tensions, cram that semitone in there, and treat it as if it's equal. What you end up with is basically like, you have like, let's say a 6-9 chord, right? C6-9, and then you maybe have, you might have like a flat 6 on it, like all these kind of sounds that to me, again, as passing tones, if you're using enclosures or triad pairs or like any of these tools to navigate through melodically through your modes, I'm going to do a whole lesson about how to play kind of on 1 chord vamps and how to play passing, throughout a mode. But like, if I'm playing a thing like that, to me that's not playing out. That's playing over, like playing it over a C minor 7. I'm playing all these tensions, but I'm not landing on them. Once you start like having a type of playing, let's say I'm playing over a minor 7 chord, and I play a line that might go like, you know what I mean, and kind of linger on these kind of notes, and then maybe repeat the wrong notes again and again and again. Those, again, wrong notes. It's notes that clash with whatever's going on. Now, again, playing out to me is really about levels of dissonance, too. Like, if you're playing all this weird chromatic shit on gypsy jazz, that's playing out. If you're playing gypsy jazz in Ornette Coleman's band, then you're the guy playing out. Even you can't play in over that. It's about matching levels of dissonance, right? But I think the type of out that people were talking about is, the kind of, what would they call, like a more chromatic approach to harmony. Basically, when you go to construct scales, some people will say, well, why do we not have 2 semitones in a row? Let's start building chords from scales that have like, 3 semitones in a row. What you end up getting is harmonic situations where you have, let's say, a 9, flat 9, and sharp 9, or a 13, flat 13, and flat 7. So when you're dealing with those kind of things, basically you're saying that this kind of level of dissonance is acceptable. Now, for me, studying harmony is like a painter studying a palette of color. Really clearly breaking them up, like that's a blue, that's a green, that's a yellow, and I'm going to use it to evoke different kind of atmospheres. The difference in mood between a C Ionian mode and a C Phrygian mode is immense, right? To it's not because I'm special. It's like going to a different country. One's happy, one's somber, maybe a little Arabic sounding. So the thing to understand about harmony is that it's not something invented, really. It follows natural principles. For 500 years, it's like all these classical dudes, what they were trying to do is explore what sounds to us a certain way. It's like they start out not having equal temperament, not having like all of these instruments. And the major scale and major scale harmony is kind of an exploration of human aesthetic. It's about finding out those patterns, those formulas inside, note relationships, like a major scale is a formula, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that for some reason sounds happy to us. But there are far more possibilities for chromatic harmony than there are for tonal harmony. But this whole exploration of tonality is very modern. It just started really, like 500 years ago to kind of dive into a key and have like, this functional harmony idea, and to have these very strong, vivid colors that come out of it. Now, a lot of people think about chromaticism, especially in jazz, as the next step, as something more modern. But really, it has much less rules. Why? It's monochromatic, meaning there's many ways of doing many things that are actually essentially different. You can put the semitone here. You can have a 9-note scale, an 11-note scale. That's like all the notes except for one. But they all have a very similar sound to them. It's like shades of gray because our mind doesn't really see the color in them. And it's not a matter of training. It's a matter of nature. It's how we are. It's how we... This whole system of color developed to follow human aesthetics. So, like if I'm playing lines with an awareness of these things, of staying inside the chord, let's say I'm playing on C minor, right? So if I'm playing inside, I can do that. If I want to play really out, and do some intervallic kind of stuff, to say that didn't work, well, it worked. Why did it work? Because it had strong rhythm. I played 16th tone. It was a harmonic nothing. It was just a minor 6 going to a major 3rd, kind of repeating that shape. It has like, just an illogical kind of mixture of notes. But what was the guiding principle? Rhythm. If you have strong rhythm, you can get away with playing everything, and you do. But why would you? It has a feeling, it has an energetic feeling that people are drawn to, like falling downstairs, like, it's like, what's happening to the music? Oh, it's back, And sidestepping into playing out is not that bad. Scott Henderson does it, Metheny does it, play like a half step up for a second, come back. But to me, that's not really what playing out is. Playing out is the way a lot of like modern people in New York do it right now. And I gotta tell you a funny story about that. This happened to me my first day at Berkeley. There's I just got to this country. I was 18. No, I was 17, almost turning 18, and I went to the Uchida building. If any of you went to Berkeley, and had to have my proficiency exam. That's where you get judged by guitar teachers, and they give you numbers to reflect your abilities. I was terrible. I barely played guitar for 2 years at that point. I started late. I decided to go. I would practice all day, but I was basically a novice. I think I got 4331. I don't remember what the numbers stand for, but it was awful. Awful experience altogether. I had my little compact disc with like a burnt version of a fusion play along of So What, like in the Mike Varney project thing with like Sean Lane and Frank Gambale. So I wanted to like shred over that. And, those are the people I was into then. I wasn't good. I was like really, really bad. And I was sitting there with like my little Van Halen guitar, like my metal guitar, and I showed up at 9 a.m. waiting like to be called, and all these like, baby guitar players like me. And then Brian Baker was also starting that day, and he was there like before me. I don't know if you guys know Brian, but Brian Baker is like a monster, has great chops, plays the outest. And he was younger than us too. He was like 16, got there on like a full ride. And, it's the talk of the town. Not yet, we just started. But he was standing there. I'll never forget it. He was like, everybody was sitting down on the floor, like, with like a piece of paper on their knee. And he was like standing up, walking around, like with the guitar strapped to him, playing like all this like crazy 30-second note, like chromatic, and actually mouthing it off to us and like, kind of looking into space, looking into your eye for a second, like, and everybody was like, we're like scared shitless. It was so terrifying, to see some, because he was, he played like he does today. He was like totally developed at the age of 16, and we're all just like babies, and but a really interesting thing started happening at school, because he was the talk of the town, and a lot of guitar players really idolized him, and and not to take anything away from it, that's a super valid style of playing. It sounds cool. It creates a lot of momentum, a lot of energy. Not my thing, and I'll tell you why. I think about jazz like a language, and the people who speak it, like a language, it has advantages and disadvantages. The people who can speak it to each other can get together anywhere, any day, anywhere in the world, play the same songs, play them, communicate them, and kind of it has a history, just like French. A guy like Brian comes to town who has great time, right? But doesn't speak that language. Speaks a more primal language, a language that doesn't have rules, doesn't have like tradition, So imagine this, like the people playing bebop. This is what happened with the guitar players. Everybody wanted to play like Metheny and Schofield before, which really is like, another stage in the natural progression of like this jazz language. So imagine people having a French conversation, like, just speaking to each other. And then a guy walks in the room with a lot of energy and goes like, and the guys are like talking to each other like, oh, what's that? That's interesting. And then one of them goes like, you know what? And then they all start speaking that like, kind of more primal language and playing all this out shit all of a sudden. And that's really what it was like. This thing is really a digression from being very color specific and very mood aware to bringing everything to that mood. It's like even when Holds were done, all these people were like that confusing gray kind of feeling. You know what I mean? It's like, I always feel like it's just like modern art. It's like jazz and all this stuff is about painting a very clear picture of being very, very aware of color choices. This is like taking like a thing of brown and just going like, blah, it makes everything sound that way. Another way people do it is by playing like Coltrane changes, but not over the changes themselves, like just superimposing it as if the audience can hear it on this. But again, you get into sounding the same way, if you play over a chord progression that doesn't exist, over a chord progression that does exist, why would you play that one? You could play Stella by Starlight over Summertime. Creates the same thing, if you're hitting some uncontrollable tensions that are clashing against whatever people are putting in the music. Again, if you have great rhythm, you can play a half step up the whole time and play shred 16th notes. It's gonna sound inside the music, it's gonna sound weird as fuck. But like, there's infinite ways of playing weird as fuck, but only one way to play the good notes. So again, it's a matter of what kind of player you want to be. All right. That was 17-minute rant about playing out, basically, and I feel like I should really teach you something about playing in. So the next step in harmony is subdominant chords. Let me explain how that works. We have the primary dominant, right? G7 to C major. So you have that tritone we talked about, the flat 7 third resolving to the root and third of C. So if I take a closer look, here's G. Flat 7 is F, third is B. Now, this tritone right here between the flat 7 and third inverts, tritones invert into other tritones. Okay, it's the only interval that inverts symmetrically. Now, if I take the root G and move it up a tritone to D flat, I have D flat 7. Notice that I can keep these two notes. And now the flat 7 of G is the third of D flat, and the third of G is the flat 7 of D flat. So basically, it's the same chord with a different root. Marbin uses tritones. In red line, that's a tritone sub right there. So, but anyways, so the idea basically is that instead of playing the primary dominant, I can play the subdominant by changing the root up a tritone. And that gives me the sound of going from, let's say, a D flat 7 to a C major 7. So subdominant chords are chords that are dominant chords, meaning constructed 1, 3, 5, flat 7, that are built a half step above the major scale chords. So sub 5 of 1 is D flat 7 going to C major. Sub 5 of 2 is E flat 7 going to D minor. Sub 5 of 3 is F7 going to E flat minor. Sub 5 of 5 is G flat 7 going to F. Sub 5 of... Oh, sorry, that's sub 5 of 4 is G flat 7 going to F. Sub 5 of 5 is A flat 7 going to G. Sub 5 of 6 is B flat 7 going to A minor. I don't have one going to 7 because 7 is not a stable place in the scale. Okay, so those are all my sub 5s. The scale or the mode you play over sub 5s is Lydian dominant. Lydian dominant is starting on D flat, which is sub 5 of 1. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7. It's called Lydian dominant because it's like the Lydian mode, but the last note is a flat 7 because it's built on a dominant structure. Now, the scale it comes from is melodic minor. It's the 4th mode of melodic minor. So really it's an A flat melodic minor scale for D flat 7. Okay? That's for the 5 of 1. So the sound of it. Here's a progression. So D flat 7 to C major 7. So that's cool. Now sub 5 of 2. If you Night in Tunisia, that progression E flat 7 to D minor. That's sub 5 of 2, 2 minor. So that's an E flat Lydian dominant, which is a B flat melodic minor, going to a D Dorian. Okay, so that's how you play over it. So it's pretty simple, but the cool thing about it, you kind of now you know how to build chords kind of on almost on every scale degree, you know? So it's like, so if you have a 2-5-1 in C, D minor, G7, C, it's D minor, D flat 7. I put 9s on them because they're in the scale. D minor 7, D flat 7, C6, 9. So it's just basically a different way of getting around. Now, let's see. Other than that, we have modal interchange chords, but I don't think we'll get into it in this video because it's already at 22 minutes, so we'll wait with those. That's kind of the last subject in harmony. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions about this kind of thing. So just to recap what we already know how to do when we're analyzing the chords in the scale, we have 1, 2, 3 minor, 4, 5, 7, 6, 7 minor, 7 flat, 5. Then we know how to connect those with secondary dominants. And then we know how to connect those with passing diminished chords. Right? Then, now we know how to use subdominants. All this stuff. So, you know, it's really, you know how to basically build a chord on every piece of the scale by now, right? On every note of the scale, there's kind of, if you see a chord there, you kind of know what it means. The last family of modal interchange chords we'll talk about next time. So we're going on tour now. Check out the dates at bandsintown.com/Marbin, and please come make a show. If you can't make it, tell your friends and your family and everyone you know, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Danny Rabin. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.